Hi everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great, that's good to hear. Hi. Hi Susan, Cynthia, Tanya, Francine, Leo, you're all here.
Hi. Hi everyone.
Hi, it's Raph. Hi, Raph. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Raph.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much about you.
Okay, just so you know, if you haven't got the message already, this is being recorded, and thanks all everybody for coming along today. Today is a kind of a personal sharing of my journey in creating a coaching system that I've created over the last 10-15 years, Energy Diamond Coaching, where it all came from. Historically, it came from the traditions of Eastern medicine combined with Western psychology. That's essentially its origins, and I'll talk about those in a moment. But for those of you who've come onto this call to join this call, you might like to know what the call's about, what we're doing today. That's what it's about. It's about a new system of coaching that combines Eastern and Western approaches to personal development, and hopefully comes up with something that addresses all the shortcomings that you see in Western coaching, but also you might see in Eastern disciplines as well. So that's going to be the essence of it. I'm going to just present on some of the background to it, my personal story, and then I'll share a little bit about how it all came together and how people are currently using it in its digital form, in its online platform. But it all began originally with me working with people in person and not doing anything on digital forms at all. And then eventually I found ways of encoding it into software that people could use even when I wasn't there. So that's the kind of essence of it. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking about the inspiration behind it, the history of what led me into doing it. And we're going to try a little few exercises along the way. So it's not all just me rabbiting on and you listening to me, and we'll do some stuff with each other. We've got an hour. Hopefully I'll be able to cover everything in that time, and we'll have time to have a chat as well with each other and see what you think. And if you like what you see, then what I'm thinking of doing is doing 2 additional classes, one next week, same time, another one the week following, where we actually go into the practice of the things that are behind Energy Diamond. So we'll actually practice some of the Eastern techniques, and we'll also go on to work with the actual tools themselves. Some of you I know, of course, are already experienced in using the tools. You're using them currently, but I think today will be really useful for you to just know where the spirit of Energy Diamond comes from, you know, and how it's linked to my own personal evolution and development, and how that went on to be expanded to help other people with what they were doing in their lives. All right, so any questions before we begin? And I start just sharing with you the origins of where all this began. Feel free to ask questions.
No questions, Jazz, but this is like so wonderful, because so many of us in the past month have been saying, what's all behind this? So this is wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, I probably won't cover everything, but I think I just want you to see the foundations. There are also 3 or 4 other videos I've got online. If you want to understand some of a bit more of the details of Energy Diamond, where we'll talk about different mindsets and paths, I've actually got 3 or 4 videos which talk about what's logical, what's intuitive, and what are the paths and where they come from. I'll introduce it today, but like I said, there's 4 additional videos. They're 4 short ones, so each one they're totaling no more than 20 minutes in all. So they're about 6 or 7 minutes each, roughly. So they should be fairly quick work for you to go through if you want to look at that things a little bit deeper. But I'll also go into things a little bit deeper in the next class and the other class, which are the paid classes. But today is just to get your feet wet and for you to get an idea of where everything comes from and its kind of principles and the spirit of how it all originated. Okay. All right, let's begin then. I'm going to just share my screen. Let's see, get the right screen up. Here we go. Let's have a look. Can everybody see that conservation of energy coaching slide? Yeah, good. Okay, let's begin. Let me just move things out of the way here. I've got it on a giant screen in front of me. So if I'm looking to the left, it's because I'm looking at the screen there. I want to keep the screen with all you and pictures of you in front of me on my normal laptop. I've got 3 screens here. So on the big screen, at least I can see things properly. All right, I'm just going to maximize that and then we'll begin. Oh, there we go. I can see what you're seeing now. All right, got that. Okay. All right, so it's called the conservation of energy coaching because one of the things I believe that everybody should really get familiar with the idea of is this fundamental law of nature. And it's a fundamental law in science as well. And it's a law of conservation of energy. The laws of conservation of energy basically says that if you are someone who's able to conserve energy and work with energy in a sustainable way and do things without wasting energy, then the universe tends to kind of favor you because you're efficient and you're something that's more likely to last. And you'll find that things tend to move out of your way if you're one of those kind of people, or you do things which conserve energy and are done things in a sustainable kind of way. But it also helps you get really clear about your priorities and helps you achieve your purpose more effectively. You become kind of streamlined. You get into a flow with regards to how you do things because you're not wasting energy and you're using your energy and your intentions and your motivation in a kind of optimized and streamlined way. So that principle is essentially what the principle is behind energy diamond coaching. How do we get you to work with your energy in a way where you're not wasting it and you're working with it in a streamlined kind of way, whether you're working on your emotions or your job or your life. And in the process, if you can conserve energy, then obviously you're going to have more energy for feeling good, for feeling alive. You can have more energy for feeling clear in your mind as well and being able to know what the right priorities are for you to work on. In addition, other people look at you because you're so full of energy and they tend to want to hang around you. They want to do things with you because they don't feel drained being with you. They feel that they come alive by being around you. So the conservation of energy there has benefits socially as well as beyond that out in the world. So these are all things that we're going to have a look at. But I just want to share a couple of things in that light so you can get an idea of what we're going to be covering today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, then I'm going to talk about the Force from Star Wars. We're going to do a little exercise with that. Hopefully you'll get a chance to feel the Force, feel energy, be a bit of a Jedi today. Then I'll talk a little bit more about the law of conservation of energy from a Western science perspective and Eastern perspectives as well. And then I'll go into how those principles have been used to form this new integrated form of coaching that combines Eastern and Western approaches. And lastly, I'll talk about how the initial coaching I was doing with people, which was face-to-face, turned into some algorithms which I could put onto a computer and people could work with it without me necessarily having to be face-to-face showing them how to do stuff. Well, the idea was always, how can I help people to learn for themselves and from each other without me being there? I realized I was going to be working with a lot of people and I couldn't be there for everybody all the time. So I needed a way of cloning myself and my approaches. And fortunately, I was a computer programmer. So I took the principles of the expertise that I was working with and I created an expert system, online application, which enabled people to do the same work they were doing with me, but they could do it on their own. Through a computer application and a website as well. So I'll finish off by talking about those things, but I think it's good to actually know, like I said, where the spirit of all this comes from. So I'm going to begin from that particular place. And just a little bit of information about myself. I've got a considerable background in science and medicine, but injury in 2001 led me to get interested in Chinese medicine and I actually ended up being qualified in it. And started learning all about conserving energy for well-being, for health and work. And eventually I got asked by Unilever to help with their rebranding campaign in 2004. One of the marketing directors knew about me working with mindfulness and conserving energy and well-being and vitality. And they were rebranding themselves on the theme of vitality. I think the Dove campaign for Real Beauty came out of that. And I was asked to go and work with 100 executives for their rebranding conference to get them to have an experience of mindfulness and also of vitality. And that was very much based on the work I was doing in Chinese medicine, working with energy and TaiChi and Qigong, for example. But that way of experiencing vitality and managing one's emotions and getting a sense of being alive, I end up formalizing that process of conservation of energy. And I turned it into an executive coaching business. And that's where Energy Dime was born. It came as a result of me applying these principles of managing energy and, boosting vitality and focusing it towards helping people meet their goals. And like I said, I was doing this in person on a piece of paper. I was making notes of how well people were doing in different parts of their lives. And depending on how they scored in various things, I'd find ways to help them. But I started getting a lot of requests for people to be helped by what I was doing. There's only one of me. So as I said, being a computer programmer, I ended up in 2008 actually encoding all my principles into computer algorithms, and I created a psychometric profile, a personality kind of test. But really, it wasn't a personality test. It turned out it was also a test of character. It would identify what that character or person was seeking to achieve through meeting the needs the way they were in their life. And I even ended up taking the software, and it was being used to help the European Union make forecasts of where it should spend 60 billion euros of money for research and development in Europe. And they had a project, it was a €1 million project, and it was to predict the future in the creative sectors, in architecture, engineering, broadcasting, video gaming, amongst various things. And they tried to produce some trend forecasting for it. And they got stuck. They interviewed these experts from all around the world and asked them about what the future was and where should the money go. But they hadn't found a way of quantifying the opinions and turning them into hard forecasts. And it turns out the software I'd created, which is to help people manage their energy and focus it into the right things for the development of their future, it could equally be used not just for people, it could be used for businesses, for industries. So I actually applied the same technology to forecast the future of those industries in Europe. And like I said, this is a €1 million project, and it got stuck because nobody had come up with the software to make the forecasts. So when I applied my software to it, it turned out to make incredibly accurate forecasts for those industries. And 5-6 years later, those predictions have started, they're all started to come true. So it was phenomenal to see it in a corporate kind of, political kind of scene being used right up to those sort of scales. So it really kind of inspired me to think, all right, this is something that it's not just useful for individuals, it can actually be useful for communities. It can be useful for campaigns and making a difference in the world as well. And I went on to do various bits of work, working with orphanages in Romania, helping Syrian and Gaza refugees in Jordan with mobile applications that we were doing there. And more recently, we're working on working with astronaut trainers in Italy for designing training for astronauts on the space station and also a future manned Mars mission as well. So I help with the technology which would work out the metrics for measuring the performance of the astronauts and making sure their mind was in the right state for the task that they were doing. And if they needed to be a bit more alert, then the performance would actually discover that. But they needed to be more relaxed, it would also discover that. And if they weren't in the right state of mind for the kind of task they were doing, they'd be alerted. And that's something like the €3 million project over 3 years. And that was amazing to work with astronaut trainers, to be working in these big warehouses with rockets and spaceships and Mars rovers and things like that. Definitely a pinnacle in my life. But having said that, this year, the university I'm working with, a 6-part team that I'm working with, we just won a total now this year of about $400,000 to upskill people in America. And it's the same foundation that's responsible for Elon Musk's SpaceX development for sending rockets into space. It's the X Prize Foundation. So that $400,000 is being used to create virtual reality training for people who are industrial machinists, cybersecurity individuals, and also special effects people who do stuff for films and things like that. So I'll be designing the curriculums for that. But the same approaches were also used to work with London Mayor and a project to help with redevelopment in the East End of London, the Olympic area. And that was to upskill people in 3D skills for architecture and construction. So these are all the things I've been up to. And a lot of it, is seeded in that energy diamond stuff to do with this East kind of West integration of ideas. And it's led me to win quite a few prizes over the years. I won a £1,000 prize in 2011 for best business advice in a tweet. as part of a massive entrepreneurship kind of event running over a week in London, Startup Britain. I won £10,000 EU social funding for actually looking at how collaboration could be carried out better in the creative sectors in London. And a few years ago, I won €30,000 first prize as part of a 50 company competition to see how we could address sustainability in the fashion sector using new technologies. So I came up with a process to do that and hopefully reduce landfill, address mental health and body image issues through new technologies. And I got to go to Portugal, to Lisbon, and was there with the 3 finalists. And while we were there, of course, it was announced that we'd won the competition. So we got €30,000 prize for that. So that was amazing. So a lot of what I do, it's not wishy-washy, touchy-feely stuff. Ultimately, it's something that has real-world impact. We're working with real people, real issues, whether it's orphans in Romania, Syrians in Gaza camps in Jordan, or working with astronauts and trying to make sure their performance is optimized for what they're going to do in space or on a future Mars mission, for example. And more recently, more everyday things like just improving employability skills for people and getting them into jobs, things like that. So although a lot of this has mystical origins and comes from the East and combines with the West, I've always been, a scientist in me has always wanted to make sure that stuff was real. It wasn't just something that people would be inspired by and experience, but it would always have an impact as well in the real world. And it would not just help one person at a time, it would always be done in a way where people were able to end up helping each other without me needing to continuously be there. And in terms of conservation of energy, that's really important. If you're going to make an impact in the world, you better do it in a way where you're not needed. It doesn't depend all on you. And if you can make it as independent of you as quickly as possible, then it's the greatest chance that it's going to be sustainable and it's going to continue to exist and function without you having to be there. So even the technology I've created around energy on my online platforms, they're all designed to mimic the help I would have given without me having to be there. Now, thousands of people can use those bits of software every day without me having to sit there and nanny them and hold their hand, Initially, when you first start using the platform, yeah, it needs a little bit of help and guidance. But over time, when people get experience with it, then obviously it leads them to really start being able to work on themselves and work on each other and do things in groups and do things to change the world. And the beautiful thing is, I'm not even there. I'm not even there. And that's the ultimate example for me of conservation of energy, to create something that empowers people to empower one another. So it's not about me just empowering one other person or empowering another person one at a time, but to create a system, an ecosystem which helps people empower one another. That's the best example of any kind of conservation of energy that you can think of. And usually those systems, they really take off really quick because it's kind of a chain reaction process. And that's something hopefully you'll see when we share a bit more about the energy diamond process. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. I want to talk about a little bit about where my original inspirations came from for all this. It was in the late 1970s, the first Star Wars movie came out, and the idea of this thing called the Force came into public consciousness. And one of the main characters of that is Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And they're supposed to be these kind of knights who work in the universe to connect in with nature and its forces and connect their mind and their consciousness in to shape how all the people, the living beings, all work with one another. And Obi-Wan Kenobi was the kind of mentor of Luke Skywalker. And at one point, he's being told about this thing called the Force. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
I'm still seeing the first slide. They're not moving over for me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm seeing slide 4 of mine.
Yeah. No, I'm still seeing the first one. Just thought I'd let you know.
Okay. Does everybody else? Everybody else?
Only the first ones, just.
That's weird. On mine, it says slide 4. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me just apply. Let's just do this and come out of that.
Are you sure you're sharing the right screen?
Yeah, I'm going to share it again. There we go. Yeah, I don't know. All right. Let me share this screen over here. All right. And one reason, I don't know why, it's just showing a completely different screen to the one I've got. And I have no idea why it's doing that. I think it's because, let me just change the display settings. Okay, slideshow. All right, do you see it now?
No. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Can you
it's coming. Yeah, much better. It's in
Okay.
slide mode as well. The other one.
Yeah,
was-
that's right. Okay, yeah. So, all right. So that's what we was going through. I was just going through the history of things. All right. So that was my background I'm just talking about. And so we're just talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi now. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We'll carry on then. Yeah, what Obi-Wan Kenobi said was that the Force is an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us and binds the galaxy together. Now, at the time, of course, this is just a fantasy story. It's based on, obviously, George Lucas's ideas, and it's fiction. That's what I was thought at the time, that the Force is just a part of some fantasy story. It wasn't real at all. But something happened a little while later, and it was something that was said probably a little bit better by what Yoda said, the other character from Star Wars series. And he said, for my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you, here between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. Well, one of the things he said there that was quite interesting was this idea that we're luminous beings. You know, we're made of light, effectively, and that we have a connection with everything around us. That light connects us to the rocks, to the trees, to our planet, to the universe, everything. Again, it's all fiction. You know, this is what come out of a story, a Hollywood movie. That's what it was at the time. But something in me, being the young kid that I was at the time, you know, in awe and wonder and inspiration, and wondered, what if this was actually real? And I could perhaps go somewhere and train and be a Jedi Knight or something like that. You know, very wide-eyed kind of view of things, right? But it really got me interested in space and astronomy, and being an astronaut. I wanted to be like Luke Skywalker, running around the galaxy and be able to wave my hands around and do Force-like things, you know. But I realized in order for me to do that, if I was going to do anything like that, I better train to become an astronaut. I better train in things that let me understand the mind and connected in with the world around us. So I did end up actually studying astrophysics at college, at university, because it was the aim to go to NASA and become a mission specialist. And I followed up my degree with a master's degree, which was studying the brain and understanding consciousness and how the mind affects the body. And those two degrees enabled me to really get an understanding between the nature of the mind and nature, the world around us, the universe, and the connection between the two. And I began to realize that the idea of the Force wasn't something that was maybe fiction, that there were various traditions, especially when you learn about deeper parts of physics, quantum physics, where there was a lot of links between the way the cosmos was viewed and how people in the East had viewed the cosmos for many, many thousands of years, especially Buddhists and Tibetans. They all viewed the cosmos in a way which end up being written about in nuclear physics and quantum physics books, which had only just come out in the last century or so. So I thought, that's interesting. These people seem to have known about this stuff way before science ever knew about it. And I found out that, you know, some of the people in the East, they had really mastered that connection between the mind and the body, and also between the mind and the universe, especially from Buddhist sort of perspectives. And I thought, that's something I should really start looking into. And what happened was, in 2001, I had an injury. I had a fall. I was climbing over a fence, and I slipped on the fence and fell onto the lawn, and I tore the tendons and muscles in my shoulder, my right shoulder. And I ended up seeing a Chinese medicine practitioner who did some acupuncture, and he also did some other things. And amazingly, the pain, the injury that should have taken 6 months to heal, it only took about 6 weeks to heal. And I thought, wow, I want to learn this. I want to learn what he's actually doing. And it turned out he was certainly doing acupuncture on me, but he started talking to me about this idea of energy and how he was manipulating it, and what he called qi. Qi is the Chinese term for energy or life force, and it's pronounced, it's written QI, but it's pronounced chi, as in like cheese. So I thought, I want to learn more about this. And I actually started helping him design a course to teach Tai Chi and Qigong. And I started learning the principles to enough of a degree that he said, you really ought to become an instructor in this, and you ought to become a practitioner yourself. And I thought, okay. So I ended up training with another master. This guy was a doctor of Chinese medicine in Beihai in China. The guy I was learning from. He used to be a director of a hospital, Chinese medicine hospital. But he directed me to another master in the States, and I started working with him for about a year. And after about a year or two of working with him, I was experienced and qualified enough to become an instructor myself. And I'm working with patients. I'm seeing clinical cases. I'm working with people who've got cancer. I'm working with people who've got fibromyalgia and stress-related disorders. Now, I'm not out to cure people, but I'm certainly helping them with regards to them and their well-being and things. But a lot of the issues weren't just physical. People had issues that were emotional, that were causing stress-related disorders. So I need to help them emotionally. I need to help them spiritually in terms of direction in life, those kind of things. So I started to develop these skills for understanding where they weren't conserving energy in their lives, and developed a sensitivity to what they needed to change and adapt in order for them to feel more healthy and happy and more directed and clear in their lives. And it's something that eventually business people got really interested in with regards to what I was doing. They said, is that something you can apply to a business? Can you improve the amount of how energy is worked with in a business and employee engagement, in what they call discretionary effort, and even in things like diversity and inclusion, how you can manage energy between different groups of people? And I was reminded of something I saw in 1988. And at this point, the whole thing about the Force was no longer fiction for me. And it really hammered home to me when I just finished my first qualification when I was working on computers at the time. And it was not long after I left school. And on the BBC, there was a study that was done of a person in Java in Indonesia. And the BBC had got this film, documentary that was being presented called The Ring of Fire. And The Ring of Fire was first released in 1988 and was produced by the Lorne and Lawrence Blair brothers. And they showed this footage on TV, and it changed my life. I looked at it, I thought, all these things I thought were fiction, and they were just part of a story of Star Wars, the idea of the Force. Suddenly, they were no longer fiction. Suddenly, they were no longer a kind of a fantasy as such. And I realized, no, there's actually truth to this. And I just want to play this video to you so you can see it. So I'm just going to check the sound, make sure that everything's okay in that regard. Turn on the sound, yes. And I'm going to play this video of this clip. It's a 4-minute clip from the Ring of Fire documentary. You can look for this on the internet, by the way. I believe you can get it on Amazon as well. But do check it out. If you want, I can send you a link to this and you can watch it for yourself. But it's chapter 3, East of Krakatoa. And the Lorne and Lawrence one of them had issues with their eyesight. So they went to see this healer, this doctor of Chinese medicine in, I think, Java. And he basically did some stuff, which was a bit like Chinese medicine. And his eyesight improved. But he also did some other things. He was actually able to emit force and energy from his hands and actually throw people at a distance. But the one thing I saw that was really amazing, that completely made me realize that this stuff wasn't fiction anymore for me as a scientist to see, and that encouraged me ultimately to go and learn about this sort of thing myself and how to work with these kind of energies, was a clip which you'll see at the end where he holds his hand over a newspaper, and within about a few seconds of doing it, the newspaper catches fire. And I looked at it and I thought, he did not just do that. He did not just put his hand over something and set it on fire. But he did. So I'm just going to play this. Tell me if you can hear the sound. It doesn't matter if you can't, but just watch what he does at the end. All right, so just put your hands up if you hear the sound. Did you hear the sound?
No.
No.
Okay.
Did you share your sound?
Yeah, I'm sharing the sound. Share the sound. Okay, I'm sharing the sound. I'll try. I thought that's what I did, but it hadn't done it. I'll try again. Can you hear it now?
Yeah.
It was in the big city, where Java confronts the 20th century, that we got a real shock. Lorne was suffering from a bad eye infection at the time, a cameraman's cause for panic. Lawrence had heard of a man who might be able to help and dragged me to him despite my reservations.
Is it in? Yes. Good Lord. Just relax and enjoy, Lord.
He uses acupuncture needles in the traditional points, but with a twist. Through them, he directs a form of electricity, as he calls it. But he doesn't draw the electricity from a wall socket. He claims to generate it within his own body. It was nothing like any acupuncture I'd ever had. I was getting really powerful electric shocks and couldn't control my movements at all.
Okay.
He says that what he does is no more supernatural than an electric eel, which also knows how to harness its yin and yang energies.
Yin yang, positive and negative, and my positive from here and my negative from here, and we meet together, this can get like electricity.
And is this because you're special? You have a special sort of
It's
body?
meditation every day.
It's meditation.
Meditation every day, like a yoga.
Uh-huh.
But I study about 18 years.
18 years.
18 years from my child before.
Can you project this energy through your hands only or through other things as well?
Not only my hand.
Only your hands.
Like you can touch me, like this. It's nothing, okay? It's my burn. Just like this.
Our sound recordist, Simi, was skeptical at first. Later, he told us that anybody could learn this. God had given us all the yin-yang polarity, but it takes discipline and meditation to awaken and control it. And you must be very aware of your emotions. This energy can be dangerous. It can kill as well as heal. Then he asked for our newspaper. Whatever he had done to our newspaper, it's how he'd healed my eyes that made me wonder. What do these people living in the shadows of the volcanoes still know that we of the West have forgotten?
Okay, let me get back here. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, great, okay. So the reason why I showed that is because when I remember when I saw that I realized this whole idea of the force and energy and consciousness and mind and emotions, it was all connected. And people had known about this for thousands of years. I'm sure George Lucas got his inspiration from various masters in the East. And, you know, if you look at the whole idea of the Jedi and what they do, a lot of it is really a kind of referral, if you like, to the masters of the East and how they actually work with energy and work with swords and a whole bunch of other stuff, samurai or Qigong masters, Tai Chi masters. That's where it all comes from. But a lot of what they do in the East, especially in Chinese medicine and managing energy, the fundamental principle they work with is you can have well-being, you can have a clear mind, you can have purpose, and you can achieve things in life, but you've got to be able to conserve your energy and ensure your emotions don't interfere with the flow of energy within you and around you, between you and other people. Now, Western science has a perspective on energy, and it basically says, from the law of conservation of energy, which is the principle from physics and science, it basically says that the law of conservation of energy is recognising the fact that the total energy of a system remains constant. It's said to be conserved over time. But the key principle is that energy can neither be created or destroyed. Rather, it can only be transformed or transferred from one form to another. The total energy remains the same. So the total amount of energy in the universe is always going to be a constant. The only way energy can be different from one moment to the next is if it's transformed. I mean, you can turn chemical energy of petrol into mechanical energy of a car being moved, for example. You can turn energy of sunlight into biochemical energy that a plant uses in photosynthesis, for example. And similar principles apply to us as human beings. You can convert one energy into another, but it's never 100% efficient. There's always a little bit of energy lost. And the systems which have the most ability to conserve energy when they're transforming from one energy to another, they're the ones who tend to sustain their way of functioning the longest without being disrupted. But unfortunately for most of us in the Western world, how we work with our energy is we're quite poor when it comes to management of our energy, and it means it's often very a regular thing for us to run out of energy to do things. And that's when we start experiencing stress and strain and even suffering, and we start to get ill. But it also applies to other things like what we do at work. If we work with other people in ways that are not emotionally intelligent, again, that can lead to us wasting energy in how we communicate, how we manage stress, and in the end it doesn't conserve energy, it drains us of energy, it even drains other people of energy, and it means people just aren't motivated to do things, or motivated to do things with each other, especially on things where they're trying to change things in the world. So if we look at Chinese medicine, their perspective on conservation of energy is all about balancing the masculine and feminine within people. And these are the ideas of yin and yang. So yin is very feminine. It's to do with what's passive and quiet and intuitive. It's about the dark and what's still and cold. It's about those aspects of the universe. Yang is more about the male side of things, the masculine side of energy, and it's about what's more active and made of light, and it's controlling and it's hot and expanding. So these two opposite forces are always working with each other to shape everything there is in the universe, from how things come into life to how things die and how everything happens in between. And when there's harmony between the amount of yin and yang energies, male and female energies within us and around us, then that's when we tend to have well-being. Some days we need more yin, some days we need more yang. And it's shown by the symbol, yin-yang symbol, where the light area is yang and the dark area is yin. But what it also indicates is that you can find the opposite in the extremes. So in the extreme of yang, you find yin. In the extreme of yin, you find yang. And many people think that that line between the dark and the light, the S-shaped line, is a dividing line. Actually, if you really think about it, that line is where yin and yang are in harmony with each other. That's where they meet each other. And it's often referred to as the TaiChi. It's the line of harmony. And conserving energy is really about spending as much time as you can on that line, at a place where yin and yang are in harmony. The masculine and feminine within you is in harmony. The things that are quiet and still within you are in harmony with all the things that are active and controlling. So as long as you've got those two things in harmony, you'll always have well-being and you'll always have conservation of energy. They work hand in hand. If you have conservation of energy, you typically will have well-being. If you have conservation of energy, you can think about things for very long periods of time in terms of concentration, and therefore you're likely to come up with insights and ways of looking at the world that you wouldn't otherwise be able to sustain a way of thinking of, for example. Similarly with emotion, similarly with creativity. Sustainability is really important. It's one of the main benefits of conservation of energy, being able to do something in a sustainable, long-term kind of fashion. In the Indian traditions, the idea of energy is represented by the word prana. It's Sanskrit for life force or kind of vital principle. And it's something that is often linked to the sun and various elements. And there's different kinds of energy, different kinds of prana, and it's linked to the idea of energy centers in the body called chakras as well. That's central to yoga, of course. So all of these principles are fundamentally centered on what energy is perceived to be. And you can look at it from the Western perspective, from a scientific perspective, or you can look at it in terms of how it affects us as human beings and how alive we actually are. So there's three different perspectives. But Western approach is also look at how energy is fundamentally used for human beings in how they go about meeting their needs. And the way that they do that, how they do that, is through any emotional intelligence they might have, not intellectual kind of conventional intelligence, which is linked to IQ, intelligence quotient, but more to do with emotional intelligence, or EQ, emotional quotient. And that's very much the Western sort of perspective on how we manage our energy to meet our needs. And it's very much linked to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that we look after our physiological needs and how we connect with people around us emotionally, how we look after our own self-esteem, and ultimately how we even try and make a creative difference in the world. Technically, it's not a hierarchy. It's three different kind of spaces that overlap with each other, and sometimes one space needs to be looked after more than another. But providing you look after these in a way that it's a harmony between them, you'll find that you conserve energy, and you'll tend to experience your life in a kind of a flow. All right. So that's a Western perspective. The emotional intelligence perspective is that if you're going to meet your needs, then you need to do it through awareness. You need to be tuned into what's going on. You need to be able to manage those needs and get them met. But you also need to do things to improve the way that you're meeting the needs. You need to develop the way that you're doing it. So self-awareness, self-management, and improving your performance through self-development are really key to managing your needs in a way that keeps you in flow. And you can do that for yourself in an intrapersonal way, but you can also do that with other people and learn to manage energy and help meet needs together with other people. For that, you need some social awareness, manage your relationships, and ultimately, maybe it'll improve how people perform with regards to the needs that they're trying to meet together. So that's very much a Western perspective on how energy should be managed to meet needs. Eastern approach, as I said, there's the Chinese systems, and there's also the Indian systems based on prana and chakras. So the Chinese systems are based on the idea that we have centers of energy in our body. Dantian means little heaven. It's like a little heaven of energy within us, within man, if you like. And there's one at the lower part of our body which converts our kind of biochemistry into energy that the body can use. That's called yin to qi. Yin means the essence of who you are, converting it into energy. Then it's like kind of a factory. It starts there in a raw form. It gets refined, moved up into the heart area, where it's turned into spirit. That's what Shen is. The energy is turned into spirit and makes you more animated. And then finally, it reaches the higher parts of your being, and it combines with the universe and the world around you. Your spirit combines with the Wuji, the void, space around you, and you become at one with the universe around you. And the way that you do that is by maintaining an ongoing, constant process of harmony between your masculine and feminine sides, between yin and yang. It's about being on that TaiChi line, constantly. If you can do that on a day in, day out basis, slowly but surely you'll refine your essence of who you are into pure energy and then into pure spirit, and eventually that will combine with the rest of the universe around you, and you'll go into a flow, not just for yourself, but you'll get into a flow together with people around you and the rest of the universe. Everything will become streamlined in how you achieve things in life. The Indian systems have a similar kind of structure, except they don't have these little centers of heaven, or these centers of energy. They have chakras, which correspond to different physical functions, but they also relate to different emotions as well. So you'll see that they've got this kind of chain of them that go vertically up in parallel with the spine. And the idea is to start typically with your energy at the lowest level, in its rawest form, and then refine it through each of these little centers, these chakras. And when it gets to the top, that's when you combine who you are and connect and be at one with the universe, if you like. One of the ways that that's done quite a lot is pranayama-based yoga, and the other one is kundalini-based yoga. They very much focus on this process of refining your energy so that you can become the highest kind of consciousness that you can possibly have to work with everything that's going on around you. All right, so those are the various systems, but from what we're talking about in terms of energy diamond, the focus is really how do we transform and direct our energy to improve our lives and be of service in the world, but we've got to do it while we're conserving as much energy as possible in the process. And we've got to do that for our well-being, our motivation, how we set goals in life, but also fulfilling our life and work priorities. And the rule is very simple. Whoever conserves energy the best, it's always going to get the biggest advantage. And the laws of nature, they all answer to this idea of the law of conservation of energy. People who waste energy, they're just not going to be able to operate in sustainable ways. And climate change, global warming, they're all examples of the ultimate consequence of that mindset of not operating in a sustainable way. The universe just wipes things like that out because they're failing to observe the law of conservation of energy. And, it's all personal. The universe just looks at it and goes, no, sorry, you're not obeying the law of conservation of energy, so I'm just going to wipe you out. You're just not good for the universe. That's the way, the laws of nature actually operate. And it's really important when it comes to entrepreneurship as well, and for innovation, because whoever creates products and services that have sustainability, they always tend to generate the highest value. And I've seen this with all the various industry projects I've worked in, within the EU, within the States, and also in the UK as well. So although this has mystical origins, ultimately, the real world practical applications of this are undoubted. If you don't operate in a sustainable way, you will run out of energy, and you'll be made extinct. You'll be just taken off the face of the earth, basically. That's what's going to happen. So there's always something to bear in mind. If whatever you're doing is not sustainable, you can expect to knock on your door one day, and you can pretty much expect everything that you have be taken away from you because you just failed to observe that law of conservation of energy. So don't waste your time on Earth. It's one way of looking at it. It's precious, and make sure it's directed towards what you authentically feel is going to enable you to be of the most value in the world. And that's kind of how it's important to work with people when I've been coaching with them. And if I was to combine all that knowledge together, if I was to take the idea of the needs and the emotional intelligence and the chakras and put them all together, I decided to create a questionnaire to see how people were doing in each of those areas, the mental, physical, emotional, how they were doing with their emotional intelligence in terms of awareness and doing things with it and, changing things, how they were doing things for themselves as well as helping others. And the result was that I came up with 30 areas or energies that they had to manage if they were going to be able to operate effectively in their life. There was the 5 need areas to do with the root energy or ground energy, their physical well-being and emotional and intellectual development, as well as their creative and self-actualization development. And there were the emotional intelligence aspects of those, where they were going to become aware of those things and know them, manage them and develop them. And then there was the interpersonal stuff, which is how they did the stuff for themselves and how they did the stuff with other people. Now, the masters in the East, they actually followed a very specific path moving through these particular needs and working through them. There's a particular path, it's called the master's path, and the way the master in the East, like a monk, would actually work is they'd focus first on refining their root energy, their drive, their motivation. Then they go and develop themselves physically and their well-being and their sense of security in the world. They refine their emotions and then their mind, and then finally their creative and spiritual development. And they kind of fulfill the roles in each of these stages. Physical security, they will be acting the role of a warrior. Emotional, they'll be acting the role of a teacher and a healer. Intellectual, they'd act in the role of a scholar. And finally, in the creative and spiritual, they'd act in the role of an artist or a priest. Now, they didn't do this necessarily in stages. They actually worked on all of these things in parallel every day. And over time, they would master each area. They'd become a great warrior, a great healer, a great scholar and teacher, but also a priest who was connected into the Tao, the way of the universe and the flow of the universe. And when they mastered this for themselves, then their next task was to help other people to do that. And they would take them through the same sort of stages. And that was the master's path in the East. But it's just an example of one way to move through all those needs and energies. What I did was actually take those needs that you just saw and I arranged them in a particular way. And what I found was that a certain group of them were just about how you manage to live for yourself. Another group, which are a mix of things to do with you and helping other people, were really about how you developed in social situations and working with groups. And then there was a final group of needs, which were all about helping other people, and they were more to do with your leadership skills and abilities. And I wondered, well, what would it be like if I could get someone to score how well they were doing in each of these areas? I could see where they were coming up short, and where they weren't. And the Master's Path needs people to ensure that the things at the bottom of the diamond here, they have the highest scores there, and the ones that have lesser scores will tend to be at the top, towards the top, because that's the Master's journey. They work on developing themselves first, and as they go up, they finally begin to help other people. And that's a very logical way of going about meeting their needs as well. And you can see here as an example of a sheet that I used to work with on a piece of paper. People would fill in the scores of how well they think they're meeting those needs, and I'd add up things and see where they were coming up short, and I'd help them and do some coaching with them. But numbers are not easy to work with, so I thought, what would happen if I worked with a kind of paint by numbers way? And what happened was I found a way of turning each of these numbers into colours. So the lowest scores would be coloured red, the highest scores would be coloured blue, and the ones in between would be kind of yellow or green. And the result was what you see here on the right. And really, this is a selfie. It's a selfie of someone's life and their energy. And instantly you can see the red areas where they're scoring low, where the scores were low, and the blue areas where the scores were much higher, like 8s or 9s out of 10, and the yellow and green areas are where they're doing average. So in one picture, it's possible to see that person's energy. But this is obviously just a person's perception of their energy. It's not necessarily the truth. If you really want to know what's going on underneath this, behind that person's personality, deep down in who their authentic character is, then you need to kind of dig a little bit deeper to get that kind of picture. And I wrote algorithms in the end to figure that stuff out. What was their real priority deep down underneath? What's their purpose that they should be working with? What's the deeper mindset that they were operating with? And even get some numbers on how they were doing overall and the skills that they need to meet their needs. How aligned were they truly to themselves? How true were they being to themselves? And what kind of impact were they making in their life as a consequence? So this is all where I started to create online algorithms and an app, and turned everything I did and encoded it into some software to help me work out things rather than me having to manually work out things each time. But the ultimate outcome of that was this picture, which really helps with the understanding of conservation of energy. This picture really is telling you where the person is doing too much, where they're not doing enough, and where everything's just fine. The red areas correspond to where the person is not honouring their character enough and meeting their needs to the degree that they should. And the green areas are where they're being true to themselves. And if there were blue areas on this, it would show where they're doing too much. And by just adjusting these things, it would be possible to get to that TaiChi point and reach a state of harmony between the things that you're doing in your life and get into that kind of flow.